Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Maria Parham, editorial page editor for the Arizona Daily Star. In tonight's AZ Illustrated Metro, we'll talk with the Pima Community College Chancellor about his work to improve the college's standing with its accrediting agency. We'll also find out about the future of water in the state and who may be affected in Pima County by upcoming deadlines in the Affordable Care Act. Finally, we'll see how changes in federal law will affect University of Arizona health centers. But first, a look at today's top stories.
A gunfight in the beach resort of Rocky Point, Sonora has left 4 people dead. The Attorney General of Sonora says the gunfight took place in a tourist zone called Sandy Beach. It's a popular destination for Arizona travelers. Sonora State Police say the gunman fired at federal police in the city and a car chase began late Tuesday night. The victims' identities weren't revealed. Rocky Point has seen very little of the drug and organized crime violence that has been prevalent in Mexico. Arizona Attorney General Tom Horne is pushing back at media reports that voter fraud is not an issue in the state. Horne released a statement this week saying media ignored information that there were 200 cases of non-citizens registering to vote in Pima and Maricopa counties in one recent year. Horne said because those cases were found in a small sample check, there likely are many times more cases. The media reports had said there were 30 cases of voter fraud in the state in the last decade out of nearly 10 million votes cast in elections over that time. Nearly half of Arizonans favor repeal of the Affordable Care Act. That's according to a Susquehanna polling and research survey done in early December. The poll showed 49% favoring repeal, 22% saying it should be kept intact, and 27% saying it should be changed. And that's a look at tonight's headlines.
Pima Community College hired a new chancellor this year after turnover and controversy plagued the college's administration. Lee Lambert took over just as the college launched its plan to fix those problems. He has been in the job about 6 months and joins us in the studio now. Chancellor, thanks so much for being here
nice
today.
To be here, Maria.
Just by way of summary, a lot of things were going on when you took over this job July 1st. Tell us what you were facing.
Well, I think I was facing, at the core of what I walked into was the lack of trust between and among individuals. And that goes from faculty all the way to staff, to the way students feel they're being treated, to the board and to the administration. So that whole trust piece was central to that. And my big piece walking in was, let me start to get out there and get to know people. So even on my very first day, I was followed by the media, and I went around and met a number of employees just as a way to get familiar. Normally you would want to know where's the bathroom, where are the keys to, certain things, but my approach was, let me start to go out and interface with people.
But at the same time, which that's a normal thing to want to do when you're coming into a new job, you had a huge task ahead of you of getting off probation. The school had been put on probation and was just starting that plan. And the Higher Learning Center had really given you a very specific timeline to do that. Talk about the timeline and your approach, so where we are now.
Yes.
Too.
So before I began in the position, while I was going through the interview process, the college was already in process of formulating its plan to move forward in terms of how it's going to approach the accreditation challenges it had in front of it. So it already had decided that it was going to form 14 committees and then draw upon members from the community, from the faculty, from the staff to start to populate those different committees. So that work was already underway as I was starting to become familiar with the institution. So then, just as I was offered the job, I started to interact with key members connected to that work group. And then when I entered the institution, better understanding the overall plan and strategy to move forward. Pleased to say, things are on schedule in terms of the timelines. First, we wanted to do an assessment of where we were determine the gaps and then start to put in place the plan. All of those things have happened consistent with the timelines we have set. So I think we're in a great place as we go into the new year and getting ready to put together that self-study report that we have to submit by the end of July.
So it's the end of July when you really have to have everything ready then. During this time and just before you arrived, several key administrators have left. And sometimes that's a good thing when you're coming in, and sometimes it makes it really difficult to keep the operation running. Talk to us about it. Most of the appointments you've made for those have been interim appointments.
Right. So as you noted, when I first stepped in, not too long into that, the HR vice chancellor says, well, I've accepted a job at another college in another state. And so I had that vacancy to have to contend with. Also, I had a vacancy out at our community campus that I had to contend with because the former interim the former interim chancellor prior to Zalima Harris, Dr. Harris coming in for a brief period, had also announced her retirement. So I ended up having an HR position, a community campus position. Since then, we've had a number of other positions that have fallen vacant. But I see those as opportunities to really start to bring in the folks that reflect my values and my expectations. So I'm very pleased also that we created another position that I think will really help move the institution forward, and that's Executive Vice Chancellor for Institutional Effectiveness. I was willing in a number of conversations to attract and bring back Dr. Zalima Harris, who has made a huge mark in a short period of time here at the institution. I brought in Mark Ziska, retired from Raytheon, into the HR role. Brought in Sheila Ortego, who retired from Santa Fe, to come in to oversee the community campus. And most recently, we brought in Gwen Joseph to oversee the downtown campus. So in many ways, we've been very fortunate. And just very recently, we hired Mark McCabe, who was a longtime Pima employee around the student services area, who had worked at every campus and very well known and very respected by the Pima community. So I'm very fortunate to be able to bring in such talent to help us move the institution forward.
But now during this time, just recently, you've lost the person who was heading up the effort to get off probation. Is that going to be a setback in that strategy?
Well, I don't think it's a setback, because fortunately, as I mentioned earlier, we brought in Dr. Zalima Harris, who during her time had worked at colleges under the Higher Learning Commission. So she has experience working with the HLC. Also, I believe she was also a member of the board at one point of the HLC. So bringing in someone of her caliber and her experience allows us not to have that fall off. Other piece is Sheila Ortego, who I brought in from Santa Fe, also worked under the Higher Learning Commission. So I'm bringing in folks who have experience already working in this part of the country in terms of this accreditation organization. So I think that puts us in a great place. And of course, we're going to be bringing on someone else to replace Jerry as he is moving on to Colorado.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you, Maria. I've enjoyed it.
The Santa Cruz River doesn't flow all the way through Tucson anymore. At the same time, the two biggest reservoirs along the Colorado River are at historic lows. As Christopher Conover reports, the drought and rising population are a challenge for Arizona policymakers and residents.
Eventually, Arizona will have more water demands because it'll have more people than the existing water supply.
Arizona's desert environment, coupled with high growth, makes Senator Kyle's statement easy to believe. State leaders are now faced with the question, how is that problem solved?
We can't conserve our way out of it. That helps, but it's not the silver bullet. So augmentation of our water supply eventually will be part of the solution, and that'll be very, very expensive. Something like desalinization, cloud seeding, those kinds of things. That's down the road. We have to figure out now, today, how to be able to afford and develop the political support for those solutions so that they are in place and ready when that time comes.
But other experts take a different view in the augmentation versus conservation discussion.
What won't work is the old way of doing things. Massive pipelines, bizarre ideas to tow icebergs from the Arctic, tap into the Missouri River. Those things are not feasible, said the Bureau. But what is feasible is conservation, reuse, maybe some desal of brackish water, but conservation is a big part of it.
Glennon wants Arizona to do more than the obvious.
It's not going to work simply if you and I or a few new people join us in not leaving the water running while they brush their teeth, right? That's a trivial amount. It's a symbolic amount, but trivial. But a lot of farming still is pretty inefficient. And if farmers were to become more efficient, that would free up a lot of new water.
Farmers say changing irrigation techniques is expensive, and many don't have the cash reserves to make those changes. Glennon has a solution.
Now, the people who want that water, of course, are the cities. That's the growth. And so it seems simple enough to say to the cities, put some money on the table. Pay farmers to move from flood irrigation to a center pivot, or from a center pivot to drip or micro, really efficient systems. They will use less water, grow the same product, but the cities and industry will get the extra water that's saved. That's conservation of the best sort.
The issues are different in remote parts of the state, where already limited water supplies are exacerbated by drought. In northern Arizona, subsistence farmers on the Navajo reservation feel the drought acutely.
You don't get a lot of snow out here, then your hay crop and your vegetation kind of slow the process of growing, and you don't have much feed, or you don't have silage for your livestock, and it does pretty much creates more work, because you have to find ways to grow your produce and your crops, and you got to find several ways, I guess. If you don't get a lot of snow and there's not a lot of moisture, and especially out here on the reservation, it's kind of dry and it's very hot during the summers.
Adding to the complications for Navajo farmers is that more than 40% of the reservation doesn't have access to running water. Ethelyn is lucky. Her farm does have running water, but that doesn't mean she can use as much as she wants.
We all pay for our water and all, but we all kind of have to be considerate, especially with a drought like this, and you got to be careful what you want to make your focus on what you really want to achieve, I guess, if it's hay or if it's crops, and yeah, so it's competition, what it really is.
Hay can be difficult to grow on the reservation due to the lack of water. Many Navajo farmers have to leave the reservation to find the hay supplies they need. An added factor is the effect irrigation can have on the environment.
Even when you're irrigating, you have to be pretty careful that you don't irrigate too much, and especially in the hot weather where it just kind of erodes dirt and the soil. And
solving the long-term water shortage is no simple task, but some are hopeful.
Arizona has always managed to be ahead of everyone else in terms of its water availability, because we had leaders with foresight to lobby for the Reclamation Act's creation and the creation of the Salt River Project, to lobby for the Central Arizona Project and the funding that could begin to deliver our share of Colorado River water to Arizona, the foresight to develop the Groundwater Management Act to begin conserving our groundwater and using it sensibly, and so on. This isn't a situation where Arizona faces a crisis. We're in better shape than most places. What we have to do is follow the same historic model that Arizonans did in the past. Anticipate way out into the future a problem, get together and solve the problem so that it's never a crisis.
I'm Gwen Eiffel. On the next news hour, the Federal Reserve announces if it will cut back on the billions it spends to bolster the economy. That's Wednesday on the PBS News Hour.
A lot of crops get thrown away. Meanwhile, a lot of Americans go hungry. Now, a child of farm workers is trying to connect the dots.
There was a lot of tree fruit going unharvested, and yet at the same time we have food insecurity, and it just seemed like We should be able to put a need with the surplus.
I'm David Green. How to get that surplus produce to food banks on the next Morning Edition from NPR News.
The Affordable Care Act contains many deadlines, and there's less than a week left for some people to make sure they'll have health insurance next year. People who are already insured in programs such as Kids Care will lose that coverage January 31st and will have to sign up for new coverage by December 23rd. For specifics on these deadlines and who is affected, we turn to Georgia Davis, who spoke with Jane Bakos of St. Elizabeth's Health Center.
So what is this deadline that is looming?
There's a deadline for two groups of people who are insured today in Arizona. One is for people who have pre-existing conditions. Their deadline for coverage expires on January 31st of 2014. So if they want to be sure that they are insured for the upcoming year, they should meet the December 23rd deadline to look at insurance options, select something, and be ready to go in January. The second group is called Kids Care 2. So for parents who have children that are in kids care, they should also meet those deadlines. Their insurance will also expire on January 31st.
And of course, you're not talking about people who are in private insurance plans.
Oh, no, these are special insurance plans for special groups of children and adults with pre-existing conditions. Once the Affordable Care Act actually goes into place, those two programs are eliminated.
Okay, so who's in those programs now, and do the folks who are in those programs even necessarily know that they're about to lose their benefits?
They should have been informed in writing that they might lose their benefit, or that they would lose their benefits, but they may not clearly understand what options are available to them. So it's really, really important that they go to the marketplace so they know that they have other opportunities.
All right, well, there's not a whole lot of time before that deadline.
Right.
So I assume it's still feasible to get through the process at this point. I have actually been on the site, and it seems like things are really flowing much smoother, as we're hearing right in the media.
Yes, I do think that things are improving dramatically. There's still some sporadic glitches. Sometimes it may take a little longer than they might have expected, but the website is much better than it was initially. And there are also people in our community who are trained who can help them. At St. Elizabeth's, we have navigators, and in other areas of the community, there are people who can help them to determine their eligibility and how they might enroll. And I would say for people who are eligible for access now, same thing. We can help them to identify what plans they might be eligible for. And there are new things available to people today.
And of course, we can make sure that some of the contact information are listed on our website, so people can go to azpm.org to get some of that background information, or at least to find out where they can go to get some more information.
Great.
So, patient navigators, they're actually people who help filling out applications. That kind of assistance is available then?
Yes, they help them to determine the different options that are available for them on the website, because sometimes it's a little bit hard to maneuver if you haven't done that before. And then the consumer can decide which one they might want to sign up for. And the navigator will assist them to do that.
All right. What if someone is not sure if they're in this group or not, or if they're going to lose their insurance, they need to be even thinking about the marketplace. Where can they start? Would it be also a patient navigator?
Yes, they can come and see a patient navigator, and they can assist them to determine what plans they're in and then what plans they might be eligible for.
Okay. Based upon the kinds of insurance that the folks in these two groups, the PCEPs, the Kid Care 2, they're getting now, and then the kinds of plans that are actually available out there, do those seem to be pretty commensurate to, what's it going to mean in terms of out-of-pocket costs? Do you have a sense of that? And I know it's a hard thing to answer because there are so many options on the marketplace.
Right. There are many options on the marketplace. So it isn't possible to tell you exactly how they would qualify. There may be tax credits that they didn't qualify for earlier that they might now be eligible for. There may be different types of benefits that they'd like to look at having. So there are so many different options. It's hard to compare what they previously had. They should start looking at what are the new options and compare those to what's best for their family.
Oh, so this is a case of maybe for some folks they'll opt to pay more, but they'll get a lot more in exchange versus maybe not getting quite so much but lowering prices.
Possibly, or the opposite. Maybe they would choose to take a little less coverage because of the amount of money that they have to support that.
About how many people are we talking about here?
I don't know those numbers.
Okay, but is it pretty widespread?
Yeah, it's fairly significant numbers, thousands of people that are impacted by pre-existing conditions and certainly kids' care.
Okay, and not to be alarmist, but what happens if folks don't meet this December 23rd deadline?
They can, in the 1st of January, they can also apply. Their coverage would not go into effect until the 1st of February then.
Okay, so you'd be talking about a lapse in coverage in that
A small
instance.
lapse in coverage, or could be significant if they wait longer. So they should really try to meet the December 23rd deadline to assure that they have coverage.
Okay. Is there anything punitive in there if they don't do this other than just not necessarily having the coverage?
No, not that I'm aware of, other than they wouldn't have the coverage.
Okay, all right. But of course, still very important because we're talking about people that obviously need the coverage.
Yes, and I mean, these are groups of people that have young children who may have medical conditions that they need to continue with, or pre-existing conditions for adults. Certainly it's a notch group of people who need medical care.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll keep checking in because I'm sure there are lots of deadlines as we go through this process, right?
Yes, as we go into the new year for sure.
Okay, any other ones that we need to kind of be paying attention to on the horizon?
The only other one that I, again, would really encourage is now single adults who don't have minor children are eligible for access. And previously they had not been. This is something new that goes into effect January 1st. So if they are eligible and enroll before December 31st, they can get health insurance and they couldn't get it before. They can enroll in the new year as well, but if they want it to be effective January 1st, they should be registering now.
Okay, gotta get started now. All right, well, thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
This year, President Obama signed into law a new version of the Violence Against Women Act. It strengthens and reauthorizes practices that prevent sexual violence against women and provides resources for victims of abuse. The new version also includes changes for universities and community colleges regarding how to report sexual assault. Those provisions take effect January 1st. Fernando Chavarri explores the impact the changes will have at the University of Arizona.
National studies show 1 in 5 women are victims of sexual assault while in college. Dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking happen often, but many times go unreported. The updated version of the Violence Against Women Act includes a section known as the Campus Save Act that specifically targets universities.
This new legislation, this component of the Violence Against Women Act that focuses on college students is really very comprehensive, and I was really excited to see this legislation come through personally. For us, I think in many ways it affects my job, and that I think it supports sort of the work I do already as a prevention educator.
Megan Mckendry is a violence prevention specialist with the OASIS program at the University of Arizona. She says the Campus Sexual Violence Elimination Act requires colleges to have outreach campaigns that educate students on the risks and resources surrounding sexual violence.
Hi, would you like to play some Jeopardy?
Yes, I would. We do conduct a lot of outreach with fraternities and sororities, and they are a group that we want to reach out to and make sure that they're aware of services and receive some of our prevention programming on campus. I think generally at colleges and universities nationwide and across different kinds of students, alcohol is one thing that at the Campus Health Service we talk about a lot and that we're concerned about. And while alcohol certainly doesn't cause sexual assault, it often is associated with sexual assault in that someone who is taking advantage of another person might use alcohol as a weapon or a tool to facilitate harming that person.
The new legislation requires changes to the way universities handle allegations of sexual assault. It also clarifies the rights for victims of domestic violence, dating violence, and stalking on campus. Dr. Kathleen Young says the added requirements will not be a challenge for the U of A.
Fortunately, we've already been doing a lot of the things that are spelled out in this act in terms of the way these issues are investigated and the transparency, and also the prevention work. The prevention work, the education and outreach, that's the piece that most directly impacts and is related to the work that we do here at the OASIS program.
The Campus SAVE Act improves data collection on sexual assault and other domestic violence crimes on campus. Now, the annual crime report that universities are required to compile will include stalking.
In terms of the numbers estimated to occur and that what we actually hear about, there's a big discrepancy. Then on campus, we have a number of different options in terms of where and how people can report. So they can report to UAPD. They can report to the Dean of Students office, who can and then must conduct a separate investigation. They can also report confidentially to the OASIS program. And the OASIS program and me as a psychologist, other mental health practitioners here, are about the only folks who are not required to then pass that information on to the UAPD. So the numbers in terms of what I hear about may be higher than the numbers that are actually reported to UAPD.
In 2011, there were 6 cases of criminal sex offenses reported to University of Arizona Police. That number was significantly higher than the previous year, when 1 criminal sex offense was reported.
In the time I've been here, in terms of folks coming in and seeking services, relationship violence and sexual assault are pretty equal in terms of the amounts of students seeking services or staff or faculty for those issues. We see less stalking related cases. That doesn't mean that less of them occur, but that's just what I've seen so far.
The new law requires university officials to provide bystander intervention initiatives to prevent sexual assault. The OASIS program at the U of A already uses a bystander intervention class called Step Up,
which was developed originally in the UA Athletics Department by Becky Bell around the year 2000. And Campus Health evaluated that program and adapted it and further developed it here from 2009 to 2011 after receiving a Department of Education grant. So we have some great data that shows that students actually are more comfortable and intend to intervene in risky or potentially problematic situations more often after receiving this program and sitting through the presentation and doing some role playing.
She says the program also offers free self-defense classes as a form of risk reduction, which is a requirement under the new version of the Violence Against Women Act.
A lot of students like self-defense classes. We recommend them, however, we don't recommend them as the only form of programming for sexual assault because they require a lot of the person who's potentially the victim, and we like to focus our efforts on the people who are perpetrating, whose fault it is that this is happening, and try to stay away from blaming victims for what happens to them because it's absolutely not their fault.
That's our show for tonight. To keep up with the latest news or watch any of the segments from this and other editions of AZ Illustrated, go to our website, azpm.org. Coming up tomorrow on AZ Illustrated Arts, we'll meet the family that runs Anita Street Market and makes sought-after tamales for the holidays. We'll be back with a new episode of AZ Illustrated Metro on January 8th. I'm Maria Parham. Happy holidays.